everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another MAMJ Let's Play of Root Double. So when we left off, I got the same ending I did before, but I decided to go ahead and post that video because there was the whole Jun's interaction, and what was I gonna do with that content, right? Like, I didn't want to post it or add it to the end of the last video because I was already preparing to post it, and then I also didn't want it to just be its own little thing and then not have anything else. So proof is there that I tried to get a good ending, or yeah, the good ending, but I got the normal one because we need to play Root before, and that's what we're gonna do starting today. So I wanted to make sure we had a nice, crisp 2-hour section to dive into this game and see what's going on. Okay, you guys good? I think we're good. Let's see. Okay.
忌むべきものとなりました。私は閉じ込められて逃げることができません。旧約聖書詩編88章。
That sounds like Yuuri, but maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just jumping to conclusions. The roar echoed through the laboratory at daybreak, as if it were a bell heralding the end. The boy gasped in shock. What's up with all the is that the terrorist people? The girl screamed behind him. Sorry, I clicked before I read it. They felt the tremors through the floor. Dang! Okay, so this side starts off with a bang too. The boy called Natsuhiko gritted his teeth at the girl's words. His words were drowned out by the shrill shriek of an alarm. Oh, we know this room. Okay, so they're saying that there's been like violent tremors. Yeah, there's fire too. At the 6th Laboratory of Atomic and Biological Organization, Labo, a scientific research facility located on the outskirts of Rokume City. An explosion occurred. Multiple explosions occurred. Memories. A calm automated voice read out an announcement. How calm would you be though, you know? Everyone seemed to be confused by the fragmentary information. Really? My light's gonna freak out now? Hang on. I don't know why it does this. It's so weird. I don't know why. It's like possessed on its own. At least it wasn't neon bright this time, but I'm afraid if I turn it up brighter, it's gonna just go even further beyond. Weird streaming YouTuber / people problems. Because I bought these for Black Friday. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get some nice lighting, and then one of them is gonna be possessed again. Anyways, the facility's exploding. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was like lighting up my face to facilitate the explosions that are happening. The announcement continued as if to answer that question. Alright, male staff. The As the men shuddered, a female scientist muttered,
大丈夫よ。この施設には二重三重の防災システムが配備されているんだから。
Yeah, about that. They're all about to fail.
何が起こっても大規模な災害になったりはしないはず。安全は確保されているの。安心して。
She is way too calm. She spoke softly and gently to quell their fears with hope. But that hope was trampled soon enough.
消火システムが作動しない。なぜだ。くそ。署員の避難を急がせろ。
The systems that were supposedly their last ray of hope proved to be completely ineffective.
ファクトリーでも出火を確認。開発中の機材が炎上してます。
ふざけるな。開発にいくらかかってると思ってる。燃えましたで済ませられるか。人力で消火しろ。
4カ所で同時出火してるんですよ。誰が消火できるって言うんですか。
Chaos and hysteria dominated the facility. Anxiety began to spread. And, as if to top it all off, a new announcement rang out.
N エリアの数値増幅を確認。緊急停止システムを始動しました。N エリアおよび制御室の職員も全員直ちに地上へ避難してください。
So Ukita was in the surveillance room when this stuff started happening. The moment the announcement ended, the silence shifted to sheer panic.
数値増幅。とにかく地上へ。遠隔制御室。エレベーターはダメです。階段です。
Everyone shouted their lungs out.
AD を投与しろ。備蓄してあるはずだろ。まさかこれを使うことになるとは。迷うな。マニュアル通りに行動しろ。
They did their best to adapt to the situation, but it was all too late by then.
非常階段が崩れ落ちただと。エレベーターも全て停止しています。避難の術がありません。バカな。なんでそんなことに。
Their escape routes were cut off, and they had no way of knowing why. Nobody understood what was going on. Nobody, with a few exceptions, that is. Natsuhiko and the girls stared at the collapsed staircase in exasperation.
ちくしょう。全部奴らの仕業だ。
まさかここまでの状況になるなんて。どうするの、夏彦。
The girl beside him grieved. Just how much time did they have left? As he pondered that question, the boy looked at his watch, but to his dismay, one of the explosions had broken it. The watch's date had stopped at 9:16, its hands at 6:19. Is that supposed to be symbolic of something? A time he'd likely never forget for the rest of his life. If only we had gotten here just a little bit sooner. But even if they were late, there was still meaning in their arrival. Wow, I tried to say Natsuhiko and completely failed. Natsuhiko tried to walk off, but the girl grabbed him by the hand.
待ってよ、夏彦。そんな状態でどこに行くつもり？
奴らを探しに。
まさか夏彦。
奴らの計画を阻止するんだ。今からでも僕にできることを。
それはダメ。夏彦、頭を冷やして。
She sounds like Kurisu, like a lot like Kurisu. There's been some voices where I'm like, is it this person or not? I'm pretty sure this is the same actress as Kurisu.
どうして？真城だって僕がここに来ることには同意してくれたじゃないか。
さっきまでとは状況が違うじゃない。もう遅いんだよ。
遅くない。きっとまだ間に合う。
I love this music though.
それにどこに逃げても同じだ。だったら。
Ow. The moment those words left his lips, a sharp pain ran through his cheek. The girl had slapped him.
失いたいの。
Those words gouged out his heart. And then, another roar rang out.
爆発。今度はどこで？お願い、夏彦。早く逃げよう。
The girl's pleading voice shook Natsuhiko's heart.
分かった。まずは出口を探そう。
Okay, so they're gonna head back. And thus, they ran, looking for an exit, without knowing what laid ahead of them. And thus, the long day that they'd later look back to time and time again had begun.
別の階段を探そう。どこかに無事な階段があるはずだ。
施設内の構造はわかる？
先に調べるべき。闇雲に逃げるのは危険。
She's right.
サリュー、何をしてるんだ？
Yeah, what are you doing?
今この施設内の地図を検索する。先ほど崩れたのは外周塔の非常階段だと思う。
隣の内周塔にも非常階段があるみたいだね。
よし、じゃあまずはそこに行こう。
It's a little bit of on fire at the moment.
なんでこんなに早く火災が？
まさか施設内の人たちを逃がさないようにしているの？
ここは危険だ。別の道を探そう。僕は隣の第2エリアに続く道が無事か確認してくる。
了解。気をつけて。
They ran with all the courage they could muster to escape from the facility and survive. But in the midst of their path, he ran into her.
ユーリ？
He knows her! There stood Yuuri, the girl who lived in Natsuhiko's home. Really? The girl who was supposed to be waiting for them at home. The girl who shouldn't have been there. What's Yuuri doing? Natsuhiko gazed at her in astonishment. Actually, was she in the tutorial? Was that Yuuri? Maybe it was. I totally forgot. Yuuri,
来てしまったの。
sadly muttered this.
ユーリこそどうしてここに？
Yeah, I'm so confused. Everyone's
家から
confused.
出られたのか？
As he asked this question, Natsuhiko thought back and recalled the journey that brought him here. Eventually, Yuuri spoke in a lonely voice
そういうことだったの。
and smiled as if a weight had been taken off of her shoulders. At that moment, a flash flickered right beside them.
ユーリ！
Oh, good on you! Natsuhiko swiftly lunged at Yuuri, and not a second later, a shockwave struck them. Natsuhiko and Yuuri were blown away. In the split second before they hit the ground, the events that led up to today flashed before Natsuhiko's eyes. How did this happen? The answer lied in his memories. It all began that fateful day. 6 days ago. September 10th, 2030. Back before anybody had even expected things would turn out this way. Back when everything was still peaceful. Eventually, in the deep depths of his fading consciousness, "Awake," a voice called to him. Or perhaps it was merely a memory of such a voice. He heard that voice as he lay beneath the whitewashed tomb. Tomb? And then time began to move. What? Start of the first day, okay? When Natsuhiko woke up that day, he found himself on his own bed, which was only to be expected. He had always slept and woken up in this room for as long as he could remember. He got up, put on his glasses he had set aside, and stretched his arms out wide. He felt as though he had woken from a worrying dream, but he couldn't remember what it was. A cursory look at his watch showed that it was 9:10 at 6:19. Same time, different date. His watch was perfectly measuring the flow of time today, as usual. Not even once had it broken in these past 10 years. He climbed out of bed, changed into his uniform, and left his room. Oh, well, 6 days until the incident. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So we're probably gonna be doing 1 day each time. Once he entered the living room, he heard some light humming coming from the kitchen.
Ohayo.
Once he called out to her,
Ohayo.
the one humming cheerfully replied. The newscaster on TV was rambling on in a matter-of-fact tone of voice.
次のニュースです。今朝未明、6名士の BC トレーニングセンターに過激派団体による怪文書が届きました。先頃行われた BC セミナーとの関連も指摘されており、警察は市の保安課と共同で。
Natsuhiko casually let the news in one ear and out the other, thinking to himself. Almost time for her to wake up, huh? As soon as he thought that, he heard the living room door open.
Ohayo, Yuuri.
Aw.
Mashiro.
So they know each other well, because those are nicknames, right? Hikori, Mashiron. Look at how adorable Yuuri is. Anyways. Yuuri sank onto the table as she muttered the nickname she had for those two. Exactly, so they're close. And right around that time, the other girl came out of the kitchen.
Ohayo, Yuuri. ちょうどご飯ができたとこだよ。
Brightly sounding the morning meal call was Mashiro, Natsuhiko's childhood friend. Yuuri was about to fall back to sleep before Mashiro's voice woke her up.
ご飯だ、ご飯だ。
Yay, food!
今日のメニューは？
ハッシュドポテトにベーコンエッグ、サラダにオムレツにオレンジジュース。
Dang!
いわゆるアメリカンブレックファーストだよ。
I wish I had that.
おお、朝から充実してるな。
美味しそう。さあ、それじゃ皆さん、手を合わせて。
いただきます。
And thus they began their breakfast as usual.
美味しい。さすがマシロンだよ。
ああ、よくあんな短時間でこれほどのものを作れるもんだ。
慣れだよ、慣れ。もう半年も作ってるんだもん。
Mashiro gave an embarrassed grin upon being complimented. Just another typical breakfast at the Tenkawa residence. Now that I think about it, it's a little strange, huh? We're not even family. Though they were all sharing a meal at the same table, none of the people were related. The only family Natsuhiko had was his mother. His father passed away before Natsuhiko could remember. His mother worked hard to support them, to the point where she became a serious workaholic. She spent most of her time at work, seldom returning home. As Natsuhiko sat lost in thought, a concerned voice called out to him.
あれ？ヒコリン、ご飯が進んでないね。お腹でも痛いの？
ああ、いや、大丈夫。じっくり味わって食べていただけさ。
そう？よかった。
This girl's name was Yuuri Kotono. She was Natsuhiko's childhood friend, and 2 years his senior. She started living in this house with Natsuhiko long ago due to extenuating circumstances. They grew up like siblings, and even today they seemed like real family members. Yuuri was a kind girl who would always worry about Natsuhiko, almost to a fault.
僕はこう見えて、体は頑丈なんだ。食欲はいつも旺盛だよ。
This is already different than what I was thinking. I thought she was like a science experiment that was trapped in the facility, but clearly not. And with that declaration, he stuffed his cheeks with bread, causing a cheerful voice to chime in this time.
お、いい食べっぷりだね、夏彦。こっちも腕の振るいがいがあるよ。
This girl's name was Mashiro Toba. She didn't exactly live with Natsuhiko. She was another one of Natsuhiko's childhood friends, but she only started having breakfast here about half a year ago. In the absence of his mother, Natsuhiko generally did most of the chores in the Tenko residence. But skillful and adaptable as he was, even Natsuhiko had something he wasn't good at, and that something was cooking. Prior to Natsuhiko entering high school, a commuting housekeeper had prepared his meals, but this spring, she had to resign for personal reasons. And that's when Natsuhiko's mother asked Mashiro to help him prepare breakfast and dinner since they lived in the same neighborhood. Natsuhiko bowed his head to Mashiro's words and muttered softly.
それにしてもいつも悪いな、マシロ。
何言ってんの。夏彦のお母さんからお礼もいただいてるし、
Oh,
バイトみたいなもんだよ。
well, that's good.
それに、あんたのためじゃない。どっちかって言えば、ユーリのためだよ。ね、ユーリ。
Okay.
そう言ってくれるのは嬉しいけど。
ああ、そうかい。ま、僕はどっちでも美味しい料理が食べれれば満足だけどさ。
And then, as if to interrupt their peaceful chit-chat, an unsettling voice rang out.
それでは次のニュースです。昨夜、6名市内の研究施設 BC 開発センターで火災があり、研究棟6棟が全焼しました。
So these are the terrorist attacks, right, that we've heard about?
火事。
Suddenly, silence spread across the dining table, but the newscaster continued matter-of-factly.
出火時、屋内には数名の職員、研究員が残っておりましたが、出動した消防レスキュー隊により全員無事に救出され、幸い死者は出なかった模様です。
That's good.
助かったんだ。よかったね。
ん？ああ、そうだな。
あれ、なんか適当。冷たいんだ、夏彦。
そうか？テレビの向こう側の話に一喜一憂しても仕方がないじゃないか。
でも、この街で起きた出来事だし、全く無関係とも言えないんじゃないかな。近頃物騒だし、何か事件に巻き込まれたりとか。
考えすぎさ。大丈夫だと思うよ。この街ではね。
Oh, totally. The town they lived in was quite good about public order. It was unthinkable that any of them would get caught up in an incident. However, at that time, Yuuri shook her head and quietly spoke. What was that weird white static thing that just
安
happened?
心してばかり言っちゃダメだよ。
え？
恐ろしい出来事は、テレビの向こうでしか起きないわけじゃないんだよ。ヒコリンの身にだって、予想もつかないことが起きるかもしれない。
Natsuhiko's expression stiffened upon hearing such an ominous prediction. No way. He tried to say that, but his voice wouldn't come out. Dreadful incidents don't happen twice. His peaceful days would continue forever, without even the slightest disturbance. At least, that's what he always thought. Yet a disturbance was exactly what Natsuhiko suddenly noticed out of the corner of his eye. His prized watch from years ago had broken some time when he wasn't looking. Why? When did it? Natsuhiko was still unaware of why that watch of his had broken. The watch dial read 9:16, 6:19. That was the time Natsuhiko's watch broke. Interesting. Apologize for interrupting so early on, but there are no choices in this world. Okay. This is basically the same, right? Yeah. Okay.
とても大切なことなの？
Yeah, see, it's Yuuri. It's Yuuri.
そっか。じゃあ忙しいんだね。ちょっとお話ししたいことがあるんだけど、今はダメだよね。
Okay, we're gonna build up that relationship. The anagram will be glowing blue. However, the girl's favor towards the boy is very important to him. A tragic result may be waiting in the worst case scenario. Please look over the situation calmly. Yes, I know. I don't 100% know how to use the system, but I do know that it's important. Okay. When did his watch break? What was the meaning behind Yudi's cryptic message? Natsuhiko thought for a moment in bewilderment, but eventually just shrugged.
ユーリは心配性だな。大丈夫だよ。 恐ろしい出来事なんか起きないって。昔の僕とは違うんだ。危険なところに飛び込むことなんてないからさ。
Okay, did he do something before?
そうだね。ごめんね。暗いニュースを見ると、なんだか不安になっちゃって。
なに、気にしなくていいよ。
As he spoke, he glanced at his watch and was taken aback. What? He could have sworn that he saw his watch was broken just a second ago. But on closer inspection, the dial was unscratched and the hands were ticking away as always. 9:10, 6:49. There was nothing strange about the time that was displayed either. I guess I was seeing things. It seemed a bit strange, but he had no other explanation. When Natsuhiko and Yuuri exchanged smiles, a slightly exasperated Mashiro chimed in. But I like both of them, probably. Yeah, sure, we'll just see what happens.
二人とも何ボソボソ話してるの？朝なんだし、明るいお話しようよ。
When he heard Mashiro's suggestion, Natsuhiko declined.
まあまあ、たまにはしんみりする朝もいいじゃないか。
I guess we like Yuuri more. Maybe because of the tutorial thing? Mashiro seemed a little dissatisfied, but... Well, Yuri's a little depressed too, so what can I say? With that thought in mind, he let her be. And thus, their breakfast quietly came to an end. I'm okay with that. It's not a dire situation. After breakfast, Natsuhiko quickly got dressed. He grabbed his bag, turned on the lights, and bade farewell to Yuuri as she was staying at home.
それじゃあユーリ、学校行ってくるよ。
ユーリ、お留守番よろしくね。
いってらっしゃい。
So she doesn't go to school. And with that farewell, Natsuhiko and Mashiro left the house. Maybe she is, like, there for scientific reasons. As they got outside, a cold breeze brushed past their cheeks.
いやー、過ごしやすい季節になったね。
ああ、もうすぐ秋って感じだな。
A day like this would be perfect for a leisurely stroll to school through the breeze, but a quick glance at his watch told Natsuhiko they only had around 5 minutes to make it to the bus stop in time.
ってやばい。このままじゃ本当に遅れるぞ。
嘘！走ろう、夏彦。
ああ。
Natsuhiko and Mashiro broke off into a mad dash to the bus stop closest to Natsuhiko's home. Along the way, they spotted the bus already at the stop.
マシロ、急げ。バスが出ちゃうぞ。
But just after Natsuhiko said that, the bus had already began to depart. They needed to get on that bus or they'd be late for sure.
おい、待ってくれ、運転手さん。
Natsuhiko's yelling fell on deaf ears as the bus began to speed away.
って聞こえるわけないか。マシロ、どうする？
Natsuhiko turned to Mashiro and immediately held his tongue. He had thought she was running along beside him, but she was instead standing still with her eyes closed, and her index finger to her temple.
おい、マシロ、まさか。
ちょっと待って、集中するから。
Mashiro said thus, and the very next moment... Oh! A voice rang out in all directions that seemed loud enough to reverberate to the very core of one's mind. The birds in the trees flew away all at once. Oh, poor pupper! A dog basking in the sunny sidewalk leapt up to his feet and scurried away in surprise. And finally, the bus that had left the two far behind suddenly braked.
届いたみたいだね。
Okay.
だな。
Natsuhiko held down his ears as he spoke. He felt like his eardrums were still shaking from that loud voice earlier, but... Oh wait, it's got nothing to do with my ears. That voice was reverberating directly into Natsuhiko's brain.
マシロ、BC を使ったな。
BC is the ability to communicate ideas directly to someone else's brain. A power that one must never use recklessly. And yet, in light of an accusation of said reckless use, Mashiro nonchalantly replied.
声が届かないなら、心に直接語りかければいいんだよ。
いや、それはわかるけど、不特定多数の人に発信しちゃダメだろ。
仕方ないじゃん。遅刻するかどうかの瀬戸際なんだし。
ああ、条例違反で捕まっても知らないからな。
大丈夫大丈夫、このくらい多めに見てくれるって。
Natsuhiko and Mashido rushed to stop the bus as they had that exchange. I was gonna say that the driver's probably like, what's happening? And 20 long minutes after they narrowly managed to board the bus, Natsuhiko and Mashido arrived at their school, Dokume Academy. A large-scale school incorporating elementary school all the way to high school. As they passed through the gate, Mashido asked Natsuhiko a question.
1次元目なんだっけ？
超心理学だよ。
へえ、朝っぱらから移動教室か。
いいじゃないか。お前の好きな BC の授業だろ。
I was gonna say that's an interesting class to have. And with that exchange, Natsuhiko and Mashido entered the school building. First period, parapsychology. A particularly important part of Dokume Academy's curriculum. Its lessons take place in a special BC room. Ah, Enna! The course teacher, Enna Tsubakiyama, stood at the podium with her pointer directed at the screen.
時代とともに人間のコミュニケーションのあり方は大きく変わるのです。
This lecture again. Professor Tsubakiyama really loves this story, huh? Enna would often tell stories about BC like this. However, today's story was unusually basic information.
はるか昔、仕草や行動で他者に意思を伝えていた人間は、やがて言葉を手にしました。
So they were playing charades before.
そして文字が生まれ、活版印刷が生まれ、電信、電話、インターネットが生まれ、コミュニケーションは進化していきました。今世紀の初頭、人間のコミュニケーションのあり方に大転換が起こったのです。そう、皆さんご存知、BC の発言です。
Enna controlled the computer as she spoke, and text appeared on the screen.
ビヨンドコミュニケーション。それは言語を介さずに行う新しい意思伝達方法。一昔前の人から見たら、はっきり言って超能力よね。でも、これはオカルトの世界の話じゃありません。オカルトの語源は隠すということ。これだけ大々的に認知されたら、もうオカルトじゃないわ。
Enna was exactly right. People who can use BC, popularly known as communicators, have made their existence known worldwide for the past 16 years or so.
歴史のターニングポイントは2014年。BC の存在が科学的にほぼ実証された年ね。
I wonder when this game came out. Was it 2014?
それと連動するかのように、世界中で多数のコミュニケーターが生まれるようにもなりました。
New text appeared on the screen as Enna spoke. 2014 was the year Natsuhiko and Mashido were born. Society transformed in many ways in the following years, but Natsuhiko was not quite sure of the details. I've heard humans don't remember things that don't interest them. I guess it's true. In stark contrast to Natsuhiko's listlessness, Enna continued her eloquent lecture.
さて、コミュニケーターが使える能力は2つ。まず、他者に意思を伝えるテレパシー。これは16年前の BC 大発言の直後に発見されたわね。その次の能力、他者の心を読むエンパシー。こちらもその翌年には存在が実証されたわ。テレパシーを使える人はこの中にもかなりいるわよね。しかもその数は年々増えているのよ。
So if they're annoyed with their teacher, could they just like send a message saying like stop talking?
日本の場合、
Bullying would be
コミュニケーターの発言
horrible
率
if that
は
was the case.
16年連続で右肩上がり。これってやっぱり日本人が。
Natsuhiko glanced at Mashido as he turned a deaf ear to Enna's lecture. The ability Mashido used to stop the bus earlier this morning was a prime example of telepathy. But the extent of the ability she used there was not at all uncommon. The Esper's Nest, huh? Natsuhiko sighed as he recalled the honorable, yet somehow odd nickname given to his school. BC is a convenient ability to have, but to master it requires quite a bit of practice. And so in recent years, it was decided that a school would be established for the technical training of communicators to improve their abilities. In other words, it was to be a school meant solely for communicators. That school was the very same school Natsuhiko attended, the Parapsychology Specialty School, Rokumei Academy. Rokumei Academy is integrated from elementary to high school in order to provide special education for gifted children starting at a young age. And naturally, its curriculum includes a great number of BC-related classes. Acceptance to Rokumei Academy requires BC aptitude. Every year, when a new student enters a school, the principal makes this speech. You have all passed a rigorous selection process and may now consider yourselves part of the BC elite. Elite, huh? Natsuhiko coldly pondered the principal's words. Once Natsuhiko finished his little recollection, Enna's voice finally reached him again.
でね、日本は諸国よりいち早くその教育に力を入れるようにしたの。まさに国家的ファインプレーよね。その結果として大幅な
Eventually, out of the entire class of bored students, a few began to call out with wry smiles on their faces.
先生、今日の前工場はいくらなんでも初歩的すぎないっすか？
そんなん知らない生徒この学校にはいないっすよ。
そうそう、いつもの BC うんちくならともかくね。
あら、ごめんなさい。昨夜 BC 黎明期の電気映画見たんでちょっと盛り上がっちゃってね。
Sounds fun. Enna cleared her throat and erased the text on the screen, somewhat sadly.
さて、座学はこの辺で。そろそろ実技に入りましょうか。
Ooh, we get to see it in action?
皆さん、隣の人と二人一組になって。
Yeah. And with that, the students turned to their neighbors like usual. Which is why students often sat next to people they were close to in this class.
それでは皆さん、練習開始。
I wonder if you can like block out the telepathy then if you know how to use it. At that signal, everyone began practicing at once. And immediately, the noisy whispers of telepathy filled Natsuhiko's head. If these whispers were to reach the other classrooms, they'd be a nuisance. However, the BC room's walls used material that dampened the conduction of telepathy, allowing the students to practice without worrying about their noise.
じゃあ僕らもやるか、マシロ。
When Natsuhiko turned her way and said this, Mashiro couldn't help but curl her lips into a dauntless smile.
ほほー、この能力レベル3の真城さんに BC 勝負を挑むっての？
She's leveled up.
なんですぐそうやって勝負ごとにするんだ。単なる実技演習だってのに。
でもテレパシーなら私とっくにマスターしちゃってるからね。練習が必要なのは夏彦だけでしょ。練習台になってやるからちょっとやってみなよ。へい、カモン。
Hey, come
偉そう
on!
に。
Natsuhiko closed his eyes and put a finger to his temple. This posture is key to facilitating the use of telepathy. It's the same technique Mashiro used when she stopped the bus. Mashiro, get off that high horse. Natsuhiko brought those words to his mind. He then searched around for Mashiro's brainwaves and concentrated hard to get her to hear his voice.
どうだ？届いたか？
We're about to get slapped. Natsuhiko opened his eyes to see Mashiro grinning at him.
届いたよ。真っ白かわいい、素敵、ベリーキュートって。
Uh-huh.
そうか、なるほど。思ったのと真逆のことが伝わったということは、これは新たな能力かもしれないな。
真逆なんすか？
まあいずれにせよ、テレパシーは僕には難しすぎるんだな。相変わらずできる気がしない。
So he must have learned how to do it eventually, because I think he was in Watase's head.
って諦めるの早すぎだよ。今まで使えなかったものがいきなり使えるようにはならないでしょ。
努力どうこうの話じゃないさ。向き不向きの問題だ。
Natsuhiko was incapable of the fundamental of fundamentals, short distance telepathy with a familiar target. In the 6th level system of ability ranking, his was the lowest at level 0, an extreme oddity for students of this school. But suddenly, a voice of concern called out to them.
あら、私は天川くんは才能あると思うけど。
あ、先生もそう思います？
僕自身はあまりそう思えないんですけど。
でも子供の頃に測った適正度はとても高かったはずでしょ？
そうですけど。
Even he found that a mystery himself. Latent BC talent could be quantified through genetic analysis. This measurement was called aptitude and was broken into 6 ranks. Everything is 6. For some reason, Natsuhiko's aptitude was top class at rank S. But despite his aptitude, his talent was non-existent. And he wasn't just teased once or twice about it, which may or may not be a factor as to why Natsuhiko thoroughly hated the use of BC now.
要するにあの適正度テストって何かの間違いなんだと思いますよ。
そんなわけないわ。適正度ってのは生来のもので一生変わらないんだから、毎年4月に測るけど S から変わったことないでしょ？
まあ
Interesting. Secretly, that wasn't the whole truth, but it was a long story, so Natsuhiko just left it at that.
この私でさえ B なのにね。理論上は夏彦の方が才能あるはずだよ。
まあ才能が能力に比例するとは限らないってことだな。
何を言ってるの。自信を持ちなさいな。適正度 S の生徒なんて私も天川くん以外に見たことないんだから。
先生は夏彦には甘いんですよね。ひいきよくない。
あら、人聞きの悪い。私はいつも公平に生徒のみんなを愛しているわよ。もっとも天川くんについては適性と能力の配配に興味がそそられるのも確かだけどね。
Natsuhiko inadvertently looked away as soon as he saw Enna's teasing smile. Enna had only started teaching here since April, but she was a good teacher with devotion to her students and enthusiasm for education. She seemed particularly fond of Natsuhiko and almost looked after him like this. I know she's not trying to be mean, but I really don't like it when people bring up the topic of BC.
とにかく天川くんは大器晩成型なのよ。鳥羽さんに教えてもらいながらじっくり頑張りなさいな。
任せてください先生。ビシビシしごいてやりますから。
まあお手柔らかに。
And thus, Natsuhiko and Mashido practiced telepathy for a while. But as always, Natsuhiko showed no signs of a breakthrough. And the end of the class drew near. Having been Natsuhiko's practice partner for his entire school career, Mashido was stumped.
今日もダメだね。
ああ、ダメだな。
だいたいやる気がなさすぎるんだよ夏彦は。せっかく練習に付き合ってあげてんのに。
そうは言ってもな。テレパシーなんて大して使いたい能力でもないしさ。
なぬ、そりゃこの学園の生徒らしからぬ発言だね。
だって他者に意思を伝えるって言ったって、要するに口で喋るのとあんまり変わらないだろ。せいぜい離れたところにいる相手と連絡できるくらいで。
何にも分かってないね夏彦。テレパシーで伝えられることは声だけじゃないよ。言葉にはならない思いや感情を伝えることだってできるんだから。
分かってるけど、それってそんなに便利か？
I'm just trying to think of what happens later, you know?
もうほんとロマンが足りないんだから。じゃあちょっと体験させてあげるよ。この私。
Mashido put her finger up to her temple, exasperated.
いいよ別に。
The moment those words left Natsuhiko's lips, Mashido's voice rang through his head.
さっきからエナ先生の方チラッチラ見てんじゃないよ。そんなんでね。
Oh, whoops. Hang on. I want to hear it. No, hang on. I just want to hear it.
そんなんで練習になるわけないでしょ。
Nice. Okay. Along with hearing Mashido's words, Natsuhiko felt her emotion, anger and resentment.
見てたか？
練習に付き合うのがアホらしくなるほど。
そうか。それは申し訳ない。
I wasn't really aware I was doing it myself. I guess older women are one of my weaknesses. The moment that thought passed through Natsuhiko's mind, Enna stood at the podium and spoke.
さて皆さん、そろそろ授業も終わりですが、今日の実習はどうだったかしら？少しは成果出ましたか？
Nope, not at all.
はあ、なんとなく。
至近距離テレパシーはもう完璧です。
Candid answers flew across the room from all directions. Enna smiled and addressed her students.
歩みは人それぞれのようね。でも、うまく上達しない人も焦ることはありません。BC の習熟というのには、とかく時間がかかるものだもの。だけどね、能力レベルや練習期間に関わらず、一つ確かに言えることがあるわ。BC の使用のため重要となるのは、言うまでもなく集中力。五感とは違う第六の感覚を引き出すためには常識を超えた集中力が必要なのよ。
Okay.
集中しているつもりなんですが。
A boy who seemed quite lacking in concentration mused. Enna smiled and replied.
半端な集中力ではダメよ。BC を使用するほどの極度の集中がなされると、代わりに五感が減衰すると言われています。場合によっては体温や脈拍の低下など生命反応さえ弱まることも。
That might not be a good thing.
その境地に達した時、脳の新たな力が発揮され、BC の世界の扉が開くのよ。
So you're saying you might die. Upon hearing that statement, Natsuhiko secretly thought to himself, concentration, huh? That's the one thing I lack the most in this class. The moment he thought that was right around the same time of the dismissal bell ringing.
はい。それじゃ、今日の BC の授業は終わりよ。みんな、お疲れ様でした。
Later, after the second period, lunch break started as Mashino called out to Natsuhiko. What do we got? Yuuri? Okay, sure.
はいはい、ご飯の時間だよ。夏彦、一緒に食べようよ。
今日は僕、男の友達連中と食べたい気分なんだけど。
まあいいけど。それじゃあせめて購買行くの付き合ってよ。昼休みは混みまくるから体格のいい男子じゃなきゃ買いにくいし。
Hang on, I feel kind of bad. So, let's go back here. And we'll turn this down a little and see if that helps. Because I do feel bad.
はいはい。
いいな。
There we go.
もう私お腹ペコペコだよ。食物確保に行こうよ。
Because I guess Yuri's higher. So, like, I don't want Mashino to lose every single time, right? Though Mashino would come to Tenkawa residence to make breakfast, she didn't prepare boxed lunches. When she offered to do so, Natsuhiko politely declined out of his concern for appearances.
それじゃどうするかな。購買にするか？学食にしようか。
今からじゃ学食は混んでるだろうしね。ここは素直に購買に行っとこ。
了解。
Natsuhiko and Mashino left the classroom. During the lunch break, students would huddle up and chat in the classrooms and the courtyard. You could hear voices coming from every which way just by walking down the corridor.
いや、今日も賑やかだね。
いや、賑やかすぎるだろう。
In this school, you could hear all sorts of conversations, regardless of distance. Like this particular dramatic tension of youth, for example.
宗像さん、俺はあなたが好きです。付き合ってください。誰？っていうかテレパシーで告白しないでよ。恥ずかしいじゃない。二度とこんなこと。宗像さん、宗像さん。
Oh. Are those trying to use BC for an advantage in sports?
おい、次はカーブで行くぞ。オーケー、ストライクゾーンギリギリ狙ってけ。
あのさ、お前らテレパシーダダ漏れだぞ。
まずい、選挙変えろ。やっぱフォークだ、フォーク。
だから漏れてるって。普通にサイン使えよ。
Just play. or those using untargeted BC to have their voices heard by the masses, even though they knew it was wrong.
Hello everybody! 軽音部ゲリラライブのお時間だ。
What?
今日は校内のみんなに我がエンジェル神谷とザ・コミュニケーターズの新曲を披露しちゃうよ。
Oh, you guys are just gonna release a new song?
それじゃ早速行こうか。1曲目、コミュニケーションブレイクスルー。グレイプリスマのコミュニケーションブレイクスルー。Oh, コミュニケーションブレイクスルー。1, 2, 3, bad in love, bad in love, bad in love.
Oh my god, I would go crazy.
うるせえぞ、飯がまずくなる。
Yeah.
曲パクってんじゃねえ。バンド名がダセえんだよ。
Or even private talks that should be best kept to oneself.
あ、見ろ。エナ先生が廊下走ってる。すっごいおっぱい揺れてる。それってわざわざ BC 使って伝えることか？魂の叫びというやつか？いや、先生に聞かれたら怒られるからさ。多分聞かれてるぞ。今まで隠してたが、お前のテレパシーって基本ダダ漏れだ。
Y'all need to work on your leakage. That sounds weird, actually.
マジで？いや、お前もなんだけど。何
Many such voices rang out directly in Natsuhiko and Mashiro's brains. Telepathy is, by nature, an ability to convey one's voice to specific individuals. However, communicators inexperienced with telepathy often end up accidentally sending mass untargeted messages.
ほんと、うるさい学校だよな。
そう？いつものことじゃん。
True enough, these were familiar sights and sounds for students of the school. It's the logical consequence of attending a communicator-exclusive school, but still, reckless usage of BC isn't commendable at all. Abuse of untargeted telepathy was prohibited as it was an issue of bad manners. But said prohibition was not necessarily upheld, however. Just then, as if to answer Natsuhiko's prayers, an announcement was broadcast school-wide.
皆さん、テレパシーの乱用はやめなさい。学校の外まで届いちゃって、近所から苦情が来てます。
And immediately after the announcement ended, BC traffic around the school came to a screeching halt.
ようやく静かになったか。
やれやれ、テレパシーすらダダ漏れになるなんて、この学校も未熟者ばかりだよ。
今朝のことを考えると、お前も偉そうなことは言えないけどな。
And with that conversation, Natsuhiko and Mashiro left to buy food. See, I'm glad we spent lunch with her instead. Okay. And after an end of an eventful lunch period, afternoon classes began. Afternoon curriculum included modern language and politics and economics. Natsuhiko was unskilled with BC, but he took pride in the other subjects. There was a quick refresher quiz since summer break ended, but he finished it easily. And with that, today's classes came to a close.
はい、皆さん。今日も一日お疲れ様でした。
Oh, so Anna teaches everything. I forgot, yeah, homeroom teachers. That's right, that's a thing. It's been a little bit since I've gone to school. Forgive me. Anna greeted the class in the afternoon as her substitute homeroom teacher. Substitute? The original homeroom teacher was on maternity leave, so Anna was filling in.
連絡事項とかは特にありません。それじゃ、また明日ね。
Okay. And as soon as Anna left, the classroom broke into noise. The students still hadn't settled since summer break, and so naturally, they wanted to go enjoy themselves after school. Natsuhiko was an indoorsman, and so essentially, he intended to go straight home after school. But Mashiro stopped him before he could.
夏彦、ちょっと待って。
Why are you out of breath?
なんだよ、マシロ。
食料品なくなっちゃったの。買い出し行くから付き合ってよ。
あれ？もうか？わかったよ。なら行こう。
助かるよ。
He could hardly refuse her request. Those groceries were going to be in his and Yuuri's stomachs after all. But upon hearing their conversation, some of their classmates jumped in.
おやおや、天川くんに飛ばさん、 帰りに夕げの買い物とは仲がよろしい子ってすな。
新婚気分ってやつですよ、あれは。
じゃあ真白新妻、なんかエロい響き。
Guys.
もうみんなそんなんじゃないって。ほら夏彦んちってお母さん忙しいからさ、私が代わりにご飯だけ作ってあげてんの。そんだけの話だよ。
怪しいな。純粋な親切心だけで毎日そんなことできるかな。
She's getting paid.
できますとも。この鳥羽真白さんは困った人を見ると見逃せないのさ。
Mashiro's declaration only incited shrill squealing from the girls, and it made Natsuhiko uncomfortable.
ほらもういいだろ、真白行くぞ。
ちょっと夏彦。
Natsuhiko pulled Mashiro off by the hand as if to escape from the classroom.
あのな真白、このクラスになって半年経ってんだぞ。
Yeah, it's fine. We can be friendly with it.
みんなも事情分かっててわざとからかってんだから、いちいち真面目に取り合うことないの。
そうなの？
Mashiro responded as if she had never even considered the thought.
やれやれ、まったくお前は浅はかなんだから。
Natsuhiko slightly karate chopped Mashiro on the head.
ひどい夏彦、なんでそんなこと言うんだよ。
いや、お前には感謝してるけどさ、変な噂立てられたら困るのはお前だぞ。
It really seemed as if Mashiro knew nothing of the situation. She's really such a kid. Natsuhiko sighed silently. Why can't she just avoid their questions with some non-committal answers? Natsuhiko was the one that conducted himself well in class. He had a fair amount of friends and nobody in particular hated him. It was for that reason that they were able to tease him like that. But to the very end, Natsuhiko was merely exerting conscious control over his interpersonal relations to live a fulfilling school life. He tried not to make any needlessly deep relationships, and he didn't want to reveal too much about his private life either. That's just tiring. That was how Natsuhiko thought, but not Mashiro. She would associate with anyone up front. She hated lies and lived with steadfast honesty, which is probably why she could not understand Natsuhiko's worldly wisdom. And so, like always, Natsuhiko gave up.
まあいい。それより今日はどこへ？
センター街のショッピングエリア。あそこのスーパーでセールやってんだ。
そうか、そりゃ見逃せない。売り切れる前に行こう。
The two of them carried on their cliched household conversation as they left school. After leaving school, Natsuhiko and Mashiro took a bus to the heart of the city. Right beside the bus stop was the shopping area. There stood a staggering amount of people.
こりゃ混んでるね。
でもせっかく来たんだし、行こう。
補欠にいらずんばなんとやらだね。
Natsuhiko and Mashiro marched into the shopping area in high spirits. About an hour later, upon exiting the building, Mashiro stretched as she spoke.
いやー、ついつい買いすぎちゃったね。
買いすぎちゃったねじゃないよ。余計なものまで買いすぎだろ。
Natsuhiko complained, both of his arms burdened with bags. In addition to doing the groceries, Mashiro also stopped by a second-hand toy shop in the shopping area and made some purchases there. She bought old anime figures and magazines, data discs, and other various goods beyond Natsuhiko's comprehension.
まったく、人に荷物持たせてると思って。
だって貴重なお宝がいっぱいあったんだよ。
So many little treasures.
例えばこのアニミーズ2020年4月号。今じゃ伝説と呼ばれてる某アニメ監督の特集記事が載っててさ。
Mashiro started talking about the 10-year-old anime magazine she had just bought.
監督の代表作といえば国営放送アニメ超能力少女ビヨンドビヨンド。
Beyond?
その幻のラジオドラマ版が付録のデータディスクにまるっと収録。 さらに監督の貴重なインタビューと設定資料なども30ページ掲
I
載
don't think I know that. I don't know what movie they're even spoofing, because typically they like you go off of something, right? But I don't know what it is.
それが当時の定価で売ってるんだもの。これはもう買うしか。
すごいのかもしれないけど価値が全然わからない。
ダメだね夏彦。目の前にある大切なものが見えないなんてあなたは悲しい人ねだよ。
なんだそれ。
ビヨビヨの名台詞、アニメ版第13話にて。
Got it.
ああそうですか。どうでもいいけど。
Hang on. I'm not sure who we want to be on. Whose side we want to be on for that one. Oh, so I gotta. Ooh, okay. We'll go 71, so that way I know there's a skip. Okay. We'll stick with Mashido. That's fine. One of Mashido's bad habits was that she frequently quoted lines from anime and manga. But without the context of the lines, they really didn't leave much of an impression. Most of these so-called famous quotes of hers were like that.
まったくいい女子高生のくせにオタクなんだから。
そんな言葉市民権を得すぎて今や死語だもんね。
まあいろいろと趣味を持っているのはちょっと羨ましい感じもするけどさ。
無趣味だもんね夏彦は。どう？これを機に足を踏み入れるのは。
Yeah, let's dive into the world of anime.
漫画に映画、ゲームにアニメ、いろいろと夏彦に教え込むのも楽しそうだな。
わざわざ教え込まなくったって少しは僕も知ってるぞ。子供の頃にはアニメも見てたからな。超感覚戦士ビヨンダーとか、あとビヨンダーとか。
ビヨンダーしか知らないじゃん。まあ夏彦子供の頃あれ大好きだったもんね。
さすがにもうああいうの見たりはしないけどな。所詮はお子様向けだから。
ああ寂しいね。夏彦は少年の心を忘れちゃったんだね。
Natsuhiko smiled wryly at Mashido's disapproval. She really got along with Natsuhiko as if she were an easygoing boy his age. But she also had the disposition of a caring elder sister, and it wasn't uncommon at all for her to help him out. She's a good kid. The only troubling thing about her are her otaku hobbies. Her natural boyishness seemed to have guided her into an increasingly peculiar direction as the years went by.
まあいいさ。それよりそろそろ帰ろう。荷物多いし。
ああ、そうだね。ごめん。
The two of them headed to a nearby bus stop. It looks suspiciously like the one we got on this morning.
10分後くらいだね。
よかった。そんなに待たなくて済むな。
The two of them stood there and waited for the bus. Mashido whispered, gazing at the city.
それにしてもさ、平日なのに人多すぎだよね。
最近街の人口自体が増えてるって言うからな。
Natsuhiko looked around at the surrounding cityscape. Rokume City was a small provincial city. However, it was home to more than 300 research facilities and over 10,000 researchers. It was a research university town leading in Japan's cutting-edge science. The facilities covered a broad range of topics, some key examples being nuclear power, biology, physics, medicine, life sciences, environmental science and technology, space research and development, natural disaster prevention, computer science, materials engineering, laser engineering, clean energy, nanotechnology, and finally BC. Nuclear power and BC research in particular received copious amounts of national funding and were thus heavily pushed. Despite energy deficiencies being a global issue, no country had secured a supply of safe and high-quality energy. Traditional nuclear power generation had been carried out worldwide until the early 21st century, but was no longer acceptable. Innovative results, including the quick implementation of nuclear fusion, were expected. And for that reason, both the government and the researchers fervently focused on nuclear power research. BC, on the other hand, garnered focus for a completely different reason. BC research was still an extremely undeveloped field, full of uncertainties in its underlying theories. But the unknown cannot be left unknown for long. It was uncertain in which ways research would progress, but it was said that the possibilities were endless. So from a scientific perspective, the secrets of BC had to be unraveled post-haste. And to that end, both BC researchers and communicators alike were treated favorably in the city in terms of taxation and the like. Likewise, Natsuhiko and Mashiro were both beneficiaries of such efforts.
やっぱりコミュニケーターの数も増えてるのかな
らしいよ。まあ僕らにとっては住みやすい街だからな。
Though it was a city of communicators, the city as a whole hardly had any of the untargeted telepathy conversations that the school had. Misuse of BC was prohibited by city ordinance, with the premises of Rokume Academy and a certain few other institutions being the only exceptions. One or two violations would go overlooked, but any intolerable misuse would soon earn you detention and reproval.
まあ賑わうのはいいことだ。少なくとも寂れるよりはさ。
そうだね。私もこの街は好きだよ。科学と超能力の街って SF っぽくてかっこいいじゃん。豊かで治安も良くて言うことなしだよね。
そうだな。一点を除けばな。
Natsuhiko gazed at the map provided at the bus stop while he spoke. Depicted at the edge of that map was a large hexagonal building.
一点を除けば？
なあ、ラボのことを除けば。
Because his mom works there? Right as Natsuhiko began to speak, he spotted something beyond the map and gasped.
え？どうしたの？
あの車、なんか様子が変じゃないか？
Natsuhiko had caught sight of a car weaving back and forth precariously out of its lane. It strayed off the road and started heading towards Natsuhiko and Mashiro at the bus stop.
Mashiro!
Dang! Right after Natsuhiko pulled Mashiro by the hand, the sound of an intense impact rang out. The car had crashed into the roadside trees right beside the bus stop. But that was still not enough to stop the momentum of the car, which then started to spin out. Only stopping once it collided into a streetlight.
マシロ、大丈夫か？
私は大丈夫。でも、運転手さんが。
The crashed car was smashed in the front. The doors were horribly crumpled. As a result, the driver was trapped in the car without an easy way out.
助けなきゃ！
落ち着け、マシロ。僕ら素人じゃあれは無理だ。救急車を呼ぶべき。
何言ってんの？目の前で事故ってんだよ。
Ignoring Natsuhiko, Mashiro ran straight towards the scene of the accident.
おい、待て、マシロ。
He looked at the car as he screamed. Oh! Oh! And realized there's a familiar face sitting in the driver's seat.
浮田のおじさん。
It was Natsuhiko's neighbor and his mother's co-worker, Keiji Ukita.
おじさん？大丈夫ですか
？Ukita had no conspicuous injuries. However, he appeared not to be fully conscious, perhaps due to a concussion.
なんだ？事故か？珍しいな、この町で。
Onlookers gathered all at once. Mashiro yelled, ignoring them.
待っててください！今出してあげますから！
But then, an odd dripping noise could be heard mixed with Mashiro's voice. And a noxious scent could be smelled wafting through the air. Gasoline? The impact of the crash had caused the gasoline to leak and start evaporating. In this day and age, most passenger vehicles were electric. This particular car, however, was a hybrid, a dying breed. Hey, I haven't even made it to that level yet. I haven't even made it to hybrid. If the impact of the crash were to start a fire, there'd be an explosion. Mashiro's gonna get caught in it. The moment that thought crossed his mind, something snapped in his head.
離れろ、マシロ！ガソリンだ！
There we go. Mashido reflexively jumped back upon hearing the thunderous voice. No, not just Mashido. All the onlookers shrank away with looks of surprise on their faces. Eventually, Natsuhiko himself was surprised. That mental voice stopped everyone in a visible radius in their tracks. Natsuhiko's telepathy reached the minds of everyone. But this wasn't the time to be surprised. That's right, you gotta call an ambulance. Natsuhiko took out his PDA with that in mind. He brought up the phone function and dialed 119. The line connected immediately.
事故です。自動車が街灯に突っ込みました。車内に人が取り残されてます。しかもガソリン漏れが発生していて爆発の可能性もあります。通報ありがとうございます。失礼ですがあなたは六名学園高等部生徒天川夏彦です。市のデータベースに紹介してください。いや失礼しました。事故が起こった場所はセンター街のショッピングエリアの出口の近くです。わかりました。ちょうどその場所付近に別件で出動している者がいます。
We're gonna meet our rescue team. And thus, the call center hung up. When Natsuhiko put away his PDA, he found Mashido had come up beside him.
Natsuhiko, さっきのって PC?
ああ、多分。
Natsuhiko answered ambiguously. He never expected that he could use BC himself, because he'd never used it before in his entire life. Why did he get the feeling that a particularly strong use of telepathy?
いや、それより今はおじさんのことだ。
Ukita appeared to be truly stuck. The stench of gasoline got even stronger. The car could have exploded at any moment.
大丈夫かな？
落ち着け。今救急が来る。騒がずに待とう。
Mashido nodded. Natsuhiko, Mashido, and all the onlookers watched over the car in bated breath. Soon enough, the sound of a siren could suddenly be heard. At its source was an ambulance and a long red vehicle like a fire truck. The two cars stopped by the scene of the accident, and out of the red truck jumped out two women. Oh! Yes!
現状はここですか?
One of the women shouted and looked at Natsuhiko. Based on their orange uniforms, they appeared to be rescue workers.
ええ、通報したのは僕です。
わかりました。ここは危険です。
So this is how they got to know each other. Because like they don't know each other right now. She's not like, Natsuhiko, why are you here? It's, oh. But wait, did they say they knew Ukita when they saw him?
早くガソリンがおじさんが。安心しなって。私たちが来たからにはね。
はい。ほら、真白。邪魔になるから下がろう。
Natsuhiko grabbed Mashido by the hand and took her further away from the scene of the accident. The rescue workers' voices rang out.
森部、状況は？周辺に火器なし。ガソリンの揮発やや多し。では放水を。静電気を抑えて。了解。
Huh. Interesting. So they spray it with water to prevent static electricity from discharging. A male squad member's voice added to the noise as well.
放水終わり次第ドアを開放。救急は担架の用意。急げ。
He bellowed out commands at the scene of the accident. And after the hosing was done, they wrenched open the car door with something resembling an electric saw and jack. Alright. And in the blink of an eye, Ukita was rescued.
はい、もう大丈夫だよ、おじさん。
ありがとう。
Yeah. The onlookers cheered. The female squad member smiled triumphantly as she laid Ukita down on the stretcher. So are we not seeing the male voice? Is that what's going on? We heard the other names though, the Dojima and I forgot what the other one was, but yeah. Mashido cheered as she watched the female squad member at work.
それより行こう。おじさんが心配だ。
Natsuhiko and Mashiro rushed up to the stretcher the rescue squad was carrying.
おじさん、
大丈夫ですか？
ああ、夏彦君に真城君か。
Ukita got off the stretcher once he noticed the two of them.
あ、ちょっとダメだよおじさん。このまま救急車に。
いや、すまないが、ちょっとだけこの子たちと話させてくれ。
Was the reason why he was speeding to get to us? The squad member hesitated for a second, but then nodded reluctantly.
いいんですか？怪我が。
大丈夫だよ。多少あばらが痛むが、なんとか。
よかった。心配しましたよ。
それよりも、さっきのテレパシーは夏彦君のかい？
Yeah, it was.
ええ、おそらく初めて使ったんですけど。
そうか。
それが何か。
Am I about to get in trouble? Ukita fell silent for a moment and then gazed at Natsuhiko before continuing.
いいか、よく聞いてくれ。大事な話だ。これから君の周りでおかしなことが起こるかもしれない。
What?
え？どういうことですか？
気憂ならいい。いや、きっと気憂になるはずだ。だが一応、注意だけはしておいてくれ。
Natsuhiko was bewildered and did not understand. And leaving his cryptic warning at that, Ukita was taken into the ambulance, leaving behind only Natsuhiko, Mashiro, and some of the onlookers.
あれ、どういう意味だったんだろう。夏彦が BC 使ったから条例違反を心配しているのかな。
I don't think that's it.
いや。
He had a feeling that that wasn't quite it, but he didn't have any idea what else it could have been. And at that moment, someone caught his sight out of the corner of his eye. Oh, I was like, I saw hair. When he got a better look, there stood an unfamiliar girl holding a stuffed animal. It's so cute. She was standing amongst the dispersing onlookers from a distance, looking directly at Natsuhiko's way. Is she looking at the accident? No, at me? Alright, let's see what we got. I'll leave it here for now and we'll see what happens. The girls seem to be wearing the same Rokume Academy High School uniform as Natsuhiko and Mashiro, but who is that? I've never seen a blonde girl like that at the school. Her piercing eyes seem to conflict with a completely disinterested expression.
真城。
Feeling something of unrest from the girl, Natsuhiko stepped up between her and Mashiro. And with a defiant posture, he glared back at the girl. But eventually, the girl looked away and left.
真城、大丈夫か？
何が？
あ、いや。
Mashiro didn't seem to have noticed the girl's presence.
なんでもない。帰ろうか。
And with that exchange, the two of them left. That night, Natsuhiko and Mashiro told Yuuri about the incident as they gathered around the dinner table.
そうなの。そんなことが。
いやー、ほんとびっくりしたよね。
Despite how tense Mashiro was right after the accident, she was now back to her cheerful self, excitedly telling the tale.
事故現場に遭遇したと思ったら夏彦がいきなりテレパシー使うんだもん。いっぺんに2つもビッグイベントが起きてさ、さすがの私もオロオロしちゃったよ。
テレパシー？え？ヒコリンが？
Yeah, I did.
ああ、なんかあの時は使えちゃったんだよ。
その時だけ？もう使えないの？
そうみたい。火事場のバカ力ってやつだったのかな。
After Natsuhiko had seemingly gained the ability of telepathy, he tried to use it again on Mashiro on the way back. But Natsuhiko was unable to send even the feeblest of messages, much less reproduce the large-scale telepathy he used back there.
まあ別にいいさ。伝えたいことがあったら声で伝えればいいんだし。
ありゃ、ほんと BC に興味ないんだね。普段の態度は BC 使えないことに対する負け惜しみじゃなかったんだ。
でもそれでいいと思うよ。おしゃべりの方が楽しいよ。
だな。
あ、BC 使えない者同士気が合うんだね。なんかちょっと疎外感だわ。
Just as Mashiro implied, Yuuri was completely incapable of using BC as well. She had rank C aptitude, but hadn't practiced much at all. Yuuri didn't seem to like BC all that much either, so Natsuhiko quickly tried to change the subject.
しかしおかしな一日だったな。この街で自動車事故なんてまず起きないのに。
だね。それにしてもどうしておじさん事故なんか。
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff happening right now,
さあね。
which is why
ADS がシステムエラーでも起こしたんじゃないか。
Rokume City was the first in the nation to adopt trial runs of ADS, that is, automatic driving systems. Cars inside the city were all equipped with that system. You just entered a desired address and your car took you safely to your destination.
でも ADS の故障なんてめったに起きないでしょ。事故率は人が運転する時のわずか 4% だって話じゃん。
とはいえ 0% じゃないだろ。やっぱり全てコンピューター任せってのも完璧ではないんだろうな。
Despite data suggesting automatic driving to be far safer than human operation, there was still something about it that seemed unreliable. And when Yuuri heard this discussion, she muttered something in a trembling voice.
外、やっぱり怖いね。
Natsuhiko twitched at her statement. But without revealing so much as a hint of that gut reaction, he smiled at Yuuri and reassured her.
大丈夫だよ。ユーリが気にすることじゃないって。家でのんびりしてれば危険な目に遭うことなんかない
So
から。
they're definitely protecting her from something. We'll go like this. Maybe take Toba down a little bit. Maybe?
そうだよね。
そうそう。それでいいよ。誰かみたいに危険なところに飛び込まれたら
Oh, the little jab. I gotcha.
おやー、それはもしかして私への批判かな。
というかあまりユーリを心配させるようなことをしちゃダメだろう。なあユーリ、真白が危ない目にあったりしたら嫌だろ。
マシロンを咎めたくはないけど松見としては気が気じゃないよ。
Laying on that guilt.
そんなにユーリが言うんだったら。
Mashiro politely drew back. She always heard Yuuri out.
まあ心配かけたのは謝るよ。でもさ、そういう夏彦だって昔はどんどん危険に飛び込んでいったじゃん。
え？まあね。
Natsuhiko found himself at a loss for words in the face of that embarrassing point. Yuuri smiled and started speaking again.
そうだね。ヒコリンもやんちゃだったよね。危険なところがあったらむしろ楽しげに飛び込んでいくようなさ。
What were you doing back in the day?
確かに僕も昔はそういうところはあったけど。
As Natsuhiko answered, he recalled his childhood days. Uh-oh. A scene about a decade old. Back in those days, Natsuhiko was something of a leader among the children. If there was anything interesting, he'd leap right into it without any regard for danger. If he saw a kid getting bullied, he'd go through any lengths to protect them, even if it meant facing a bully bigger than him. And uncharacteristic boy of his age, he was the kid who would play with girls even if it meant other boys making fun of him.
はーい、ユーリ
Oh
に
my
真白
god, they're so
遊びに行
adorable!
こうぜ。
Two young girls responded to the young Natsuhiko's voice.
どこ行く？
公園行こうよ。
Oh my
この
god,
間あそこで可愛いワンちゃんに会ったんだ。
they're so cute!
よし、それじゃあ今日はその犬探しだ。二人ともついてこい。犬どこだ？犬いたら返事しろ。
ヒコリン、お返事できるわけないよ。
よーし、それじゃあ夏彦、 どっちが先に見つけられるか勝負しない？
This is so adorable.
おう、それじゃ負けた方が勝った方の言うこと聞くのな。
もうすぐにそうやって勝負するんだから。
Oh, does he? Brat boss Natsuhiko and tomboy Mashiro had something of a boyish rivalry. Since they always both lived in the same neighborhood in Rokume City, they were already acquainted before they could remember. And once Yuuri moved in, the three of them quickly became friends. They had many friends, but they most enjoyed playing with just the three of them. They would go on faraway tests of courage.
怖いよ。
Oh.
大丈夫だよ、ユーリ。私がついてるから。
ましろ、声震えてるぞ。
Or practice BC together.
ダメだよ、夏彦。テレパシーなんてできないよ。
諦めるなよ。できるまで頑張ろう。
They didn't just play outside either. They'd also visit each other's houses.
お邪魔します。はあ、夏彦の家広い。
ねえねえ、何して遊ぼうか。
めんこ、それか、ベーゴマ。
Wow.
古いよ、夏彦。アニメ見ようよ。ビヨンドビヨンド配信中だしさ。
みんなで5本読まない？博士ならいっぱい持ってるでしょ。
じゃあベーゴマやりながらアニメ見て本読んで。
そんなにいっぺんにできないって。
Multitasking.
ヒコリン、欲張りすぎだよ。
Yuuri was 2 years older than the other two, but the age difference was inconsequential. Their hobbies and personalities were all over the place, but the three of them were always together. As long as they were all together, they had fun no matter what they did. And their relationship continued even now. The boys were really dead set on making fun of me back then, huh? But thanks to his perseverance, he was able to build the interpersonal relationships he had now. The familiar relationships one builds from childhood are nigh irreplaceable. And that's exactly why one can both scold someone and worry about them at the same time.
まあ今考えるとみんなを振り回してばっかりだったよ。
そう？私は結構楽しかったけどな。
いや、やっぱり平穏が一番だよ。自分から危険に踏み込むことはないって。身の回りが平和であってこそ、こうして美味しい夕食も食べられるんだからさ。
まあそうだね。
Something must have happened for him to mellow out, right? Mashiro's mood seemed to be more or less improved after being praised for her cooking. And naturally, Yuuri joined in too.
ねえ、マシロ、このお魚すごく美味しいよ。
だな。これなんて魚？
そりゃタチウオっていうの。崩れやすい身を丁寧にムニエルにしてみました。
What?
すごいな、マシロ。日に日にお料理の腕が上達していくよ。
I can't cook. Don't ever expect me to cook for you. I mean, I'll try. I'll do my best, but Amanda would be so disappointed because she'd be like, no, I don't belong. You don't belong in the kitchen, as in to me, because I suck. The only time I cook is when it's for myself, if like Amanda has to work late or something.
だな。もはやプロ顔負けだ。
そりゃ褒めすぎ。でも悪い気はしない。もっと褒めて。
With a simple change of topic, the smiles returned to the dinner table. Natsuhiko found such peaceful times to be the most pleasant. Eventually, dinner came to a close. And after a little time spent chatting, it was time for Mashiro to go home.
それじゃあ夏彦にユーリ、また明日ね。
She made her usual farewell.
マシロ、今日もありがとう。
たまには送っていこうか？
いいのいいの。どうせすぐ近くだし。それじゃあおやすみ、お二人さん。
Mashiro returned their words with a smile as she left the house. Once Mashiro left, there wasn't much for them to do. They basically just relaxed until nighttime came.
さて、シャワーでも浴びるかな。
はーい、どうぞ。
Yuuri would apparently take her baths during the daytime in consideration for Natsuhiko.
それじゃちょっと失礼するよ。
That's kind of nice. And with that, Natsuhiko headed to the bathroom. After a simple shower, he brushed his teeth and went back to the living room. Oh, he's not gonna take a bath? And Yuuri was there reading a book, waiting for him.
おかえり、ヒコリン。
ただいま。
ヒコリン、もう寝る？少しおしゃべりしない？
いいね。それじゃあホットミルクでも入れようか。
飲む飲む。
了解。
So cute! Natsuhiko answered affirmatively and headed towards the kitchen. Both Natsuhiko and Yuuri loved hot milk. Natsuhiko warmed up the hot milk for two and returned to the living room.
はい、どうぞ。
ありがとう。
Natsuhiko and Yuuri sat on the sofa surrounding the table.
ユーリ、今日はどういう風に過ごしたんだい？
少し編み物をしたよ。
Now that she mentioned it, Natsuhiko remembered that Yuuri had started knitting this summer. To make presents for Natsuhiko and Mashiro, apparently.
ああ、進みはどうだい？
どうかな。冬までにできればいいけど。
それじゃ楽しみにしておこうかな。
期待に添えるように頑張るよ。
Yuuri smiled upon hearing Natsuhiko's reply. Natsuhiko enjoyed spending time having a quiet conversation with Yuuri after Mashiro went home.
それとね、今日は2冊本を読んで、さっき3冊目に突入したところだよ。
She's a fast reader.
どんな本
？1冊目はね、南米の作家さんの本で、ある一族の隆盛から滅亡までを描いた幻想的な物語。2冊目はね、夢をテーマにした連作だよ。例えば、死んでしまった女の人を100年間ずっと待ち続ける男の人の話とか。
I'll have to see if these are actual books or not.
なるほどね。どっちも夢とか幻想ってのがキーワードか。
それと孤独と約束かな。
Yuuri was quite the bookworm. She wasn't picky about genres either. She made sure to read at least one book a day regardless of the genre. And at the end of the day, she'd give Natsuhiko her impressions.
ちなみにこんな素敵なセリフがあったよ。天から落ちた星のかけらを私のお墓に置いてくれますか？そうして100年お墓のそばで待っててくれますか？きっと会いに来ますから。
むちゃくちゃ言うな。
でもそういった女性にね、男の人は待っていると即答するの。そして本当にたった一人で100年間待っちゃうの。
Oh yeah, we're definitely invested in this story.
そりゃすごいな。二人は恋人同士だったのか？
違うんだよ。ただ約束をしたってだけの相手。なのに女の人もちゃんと約束を守って、男の人に会いに来るの。100年前と同じ星が瞬く夜、花に姿を変えてね。
That's actually really sweet.
綺麗な話だな。
でしょ？ロマンチックでしょ？ね、ヒコリンならどう？100年間も一つの約束を守り続けることができる？
さすがに待っているって即答するのは難しいだろうけど、それでも約束したのならきっと守ると思うよ。
だよね。ヒコリン、約束破らないもんね。
それだけが取り柄だからさ。
Just that? That's all you got? Natsuhiko and Yuuri smiled at each other. To read books and to do some knitting, such was Yuri's daily life. She didn't go to school, nor work, nor even a step outside the house. And it was Natsuhiko's responsibility to protect that daily life. There were circumstances behind why Yuuri never left the house. It all revolved around a certain incident that occurred 9 years ago. Is this going to connect back to Kazami's sister? I wonder. Back in those days, Yuuri was still a laid-back girl, but she was far more active. Natsuhiko would take Yuuri and Mashiro along on exploration adventures to various places. But one day, as a result of his own actions, Natsuhiko exposed Yuuri to a life and death situation. Burned into Natsuhiko's memory was a fire, a resounding alarm, and a flickering red light. That's the labo. Natsuhiko and Yuuri trapped. Yuri's crying voice. Is that the future? Just remembering gave him the chills. Natsuhiko constantly regretted his actions for the past 9 years. I mustn't ever do that again. Natsuhiko was still emotionally scarred. But Yuri's scars were probably far deeper than his. Unfortunately, her parents passed away in a traffic accident, leaving her without a single relative. Natsuhiko's mother took custody of Yuuri out of compassion, but by that time, the repeated tragedies had already taken their toll on the young girl's heart. Ever since that day, Yuuri was extremely afraid of going outside and shut herself up in the house. Nobody could convince her to go outside, not even by force.
なあ、ユーリ。外に出てみない？
3 days after she began to live in the Tenkawa residence, Natsuhiko steeled himself and tried to talk her out of the concern that she'd never leave the house.
いやって、そういうわけにもいかないだろ。
嫌なの。怖いの。
Oh my god.
このまま学校にも行かないで、ここでずっと暮らすのか？ほら、僕が一緒に行ってあげるから。
The moment Natsuhiko tried to pull her by the hand. Oh my god, it's so sad. Yuuri burst into tears. So how did she end up in Labo? You know what I mean? Yuuri cowered in fear as she cried.
Yuuri.
Yuuri twitched when Natsuhiko tried to lend her a helping hand. She froze still as a rock, and then all he heard from her was heavy breathing. Natsuhiko could do nothing but stand there at a loss for what to do. Day after day after day, nothing changed. She would cry, she would suffer migraines, she'd have difficulty breathing. She'd fear the outside was so strong that it resulted in psychological issues. A year later, Natsuhiko gave up trying to make Yuuri go outside entirely. He was afraid. He was afraid that he'd break Yuri's heart. And without Yuuri ever going outside again. 8 more years passed. PTSD, huh? Post-traumatic stress disorder, a psychological condition stemming from extreme situations like life and death experiences. Yuuri suffered from PTSD today. Her symptoms included flashbacks or nightmares about her past experience. She tended to avoid the things that served as the sources of her trauma. A panic disorder also accompanied these symptoms. It was classic PTSD. I changed her. Yuuri merely lived a quiet life within these walls without ever leaving the house. It hurt Natsuhiko's heart to think about her situation. But Yuuri was keenly aware that it distressed him, so she would always look at him with a compassionate look on her face.
どうしたの？ヒコリン。急に黙って。また、昔のことを考えてるの？
え？
ヒコリンは何も気にしなくてもいいんだよ。この家に住まわせてもらってるし、ヒコリンにもすごくよくしてもらってるしね。ヒコリンがいて、マシロンがいて、今は毎日楽しいから。だから、本当に気にしないで。
Yuuri spoke with a gentle smile. A very clear and somehow ephemeral smile. Indeed, Despite her fragile heart, she was perfectly willing to let Natsuhiko stay by her side. And so in turn, Natsuhiko vowed to always live up to that smile. It's my duty to stay by her side and watch over her. His bond with Yuuri made his friendships with his classmates seem almost inconsequential in comparison. Adding Mashido into the mix meant he was more content with the interpersonal relationships he already had. With that in mind, Natsuhiko returned Yuri's smile.
ありがとう、ユーリ。こんなこと言ったら怒られるかもしれないけど、僕もユーリといられて嬉しいと思っているよ。
Yuuri looked a bit lonely when Natsuhiko said this.
あ、でもね、一つだけ気になることがあるの。
何？
ヒコリンとマシロンの仲がちっとも進展しないことだよ。
Excuse me? Let's leave it at this and we'll see what happens.
私、邪魔してないかな？
Yeah, we definitely want Yuuri to be higher up here.
なんでそこでマシロが出てくるんだよ。
だってマシロンあんなに素敵な女の子でお料理も上手だし、ヒコリンに優しいのに。
何言ってんだよ。あいつが優しいのは僕に対してだけじゃないって。
Natsuhiko rushed to find an excuse and avoid giving Yuuri the wrong idea.
困った人を見過ごせないってのがあいつのモットーなんだよ。
Although she probably
親
does
切
have
心以
feelings,
上の
but
感情は持ってないよ。
本当かな？
ほんと。それにあいつ全然男に興味ないって言ってたよ。どっちかっていうと女の子の方に興味があるねだってさ。それもどうかとは思うけど。
But despite his excuse, Yuuri shot him a dubious look.
なんてね、冗談。
She eventually said with a smile.
悪い冗談だぞ、ユーリ。
素敵な恋の話を読んだから、たまにはこんな話もいいかと思ってね。しどろもどろになるヒコリンが面白くて、ちょっと意地悪しちゃった。
Okay, fine.
叶わないな。
Natsuhiko and Yuuri exchanged smiles, and thus they leisurely spent their time in peace. The room was filled with not love, not friendship, but absolute peace of mind transcending either. And after a little bit, they talked about Yuri's third book of the day. And before they knew it, it was already late at night.
もうこんな時間か。
Before Natsuhiko realized it, Yuri's sleepy eyes were drooping too.
そろそろ寝ようか、ユーリ。
Aw, she's so sleepy.
そうだね。
Yuuri said that as she stood up.
今日はいろいろなことがあったね。
ああ、明日は何事もない一日であればいいな。
Oh, it's going to get intense. Remember what Ukita said? Natsuhiko mused as he carried the cups to the kitchen and dumped Yuri's milk into the sink.
それじゃあおやすみ、ユーリ。
And with that exchange of words, Natsuhiko went to turn off the lights in the living room. When suddenly, he heard a soft voice from behind him.
ねえ、ヒコリン。ヒコリンは怖いと思ってるよね。
What?
え？
Natsuhiko jumped back and looked at Yuuri.
怖いって何が？
今の穏やかな生活を失うこと。繰り返しの日々が繰り返しじゃなくなることだよ。
Yuri's silhouette rose out from the darkness.
穏やかに暮らしているのは何か行動することで予想もしないことが起きるのが怖いんでしょう。自分だけなら大丈夫でも他人を巻き込むのが怖くて。
Yuri's tone of voice was different from usual. What's going on? Yuri's panic disorder had been triggered many times in the past before, but it had always been limited to when someone had tried to take her outside. But this is different. He wasn't trying to take her outside, and she didn't seem to be having a panic attack. Yuuri continued in spite of Natsuhiko's confusion.
でもヒコリンはもうあの頃のような子供じゃないんだよ。悲しみを乗り越えられる強さを手に入れてるのかもしれないのに。
ユーリ、何を言ってるんだ？
Yuuri was lit by the moonlight shining through the window, but the light was indistinct, leaving her expression ambiguous.
これからヒコリンの身にはいろんな出来事が起こると思う。
Yeah, Ukita said that too.
楽しいことも辛いことも勇気なくしては乗り越えられないこともだけどきっとそのどれもが避けちゃいけないことなんだ。
It's also weird that Yuuri's saying this, right? The one who's afraid to go outside. Yuuri's prediction became gradually more ominous, which disturbed Natsuhiko.
ユーリ、もしかしてもう半分寝てるのか？寝ぼけてるんだろ？
そんな当たり前の答えだと思う。
だっていつもならもう寝てる時間。
何時？
To answer her question, Natsuhiko took one look at his watch. Oh, and his eyes popped. His watch had broken before he had realized it. The hands were frozen in the same way they were this morning.
そんな、どうして？
Natsuhiko stared through the darkness at the dial in disbelief. The watch dial read 9:16, 6:19. Early morning, 6 days from today. Well then.
ヒコリン、聞こえる？ヒコリン。
Oh, we're back in the facility. Natsuhiko opened his eyes upon hearing Yuri's voice.
よかった。無事だったんだね。
ああ。
Natsuhiko strained his consciousness together as he stood up. He seemed to have had a dream in the short time he was unconscious. Through the smoke and smog, he rushed over to Mashiro.
夏彦！爆発音がしたけど大丈夫？
いや、ここは。
今がいつでどういう状況かわかる？
いつって。
He looked at his watch on reflex, but it had been broken. The moment he saw it, he remembered that today was September 16th. Okay, good. I'm like, we're not gonna have double amnesia, are we? That's right. I'm trying to find a way out of this facility. But along the way, he encountered Yuuri, despite her never leaving the house, and immediately afterwards, they got caught in an explosion. All around him were wisps of flame flickering in the air, perhaps due to the explosion.
Yuuri, 逃げよう!
Mashiro and the other girl stared in confusion at Natsuhiko's explanation.
ユーリ？ユーリがどうしたの？
What?
いや、僕も驚いたんだけど、ユーリはこの施設の中にいたんだ。
Mashiro and the other girl looked around in shock. Yuuri was standing in the smoke.
どうしてユーリが？家から出られないはずでしょ。
まさか僕らが心配でついてきて。
The moment those words left his lips, an announcement rang out over the intercom.
緊急放送です。ただいま施設内で多数の爆発が起きています。爆発は主に各非常階段付近で発生。今のところ第2エリア以降の非常階段は一部無事ですが、それらも随時崩壊している模様です。危険です。職員の皆様は早急に地上に避難してください。
Natsuhiko gasped as he heard the desperate voice screaming. The situation was critical. He didn't understand why Yuuri had come here, but there was no time to ask her.
こうなったらユーリも連れて4人で脱出しよう。サリュー、第1エリアのエレベーターは使えそうだったか？
The girl beside Mashiro answered.
残念ながら止まっていた。どうやらエレベーターは普通の模様。
地上に出るには無事な非常階段を探すしかないよ。
じゃあ行こう。第2エリアはこの先だ。
Everyone nodded to Natsuhiko in consent and they all started to run. As he ran, Natsuhiko muttered listlessly.
あの日の夢を見てたんだ。6日前、9月10日の夢。
9月10日？
考えてみれば、あの日から日常が変わり始めていた気がする。初めてテレパシーを使ったのも、ユーリが予言めいたことを言ったのも、全部あの日だ。
ユーリが予言？それってどんな？
これから僕の身にはいろんなことが起きると思うってさ。なあユーリ、なんであんなこと言ったんだ？
Yuuri didn't reply. At that moment, they came across a closed gate at the end of the hallway.
行き止まりだ。
今は全てのゲートが開放されてるって言っていたのに。
Apparently, the gate had warped slightly due to either the explosions or the fires and was stuck shut.
夏彦、引き返す。
いや。
Oh god. The path back was blocked by flames. It was too late to turn back now.
仕方ない。手動でこじ開けよう。みんな手伝ってくれ。
They jumped to the gate and strained themselves hard. The gate creaked and started to open little by little. However,
どうしたマシロ？
爪が。
oh god. On closer inspection, part of her nail had torn off and blood was oozing from her finger.
大丈夫か？僕らだけでも十分だから、ユーリと一緒に待ってろ。
Mashiro stepped back as the others returned to prying open the gate. The fires raged closer from behind. If they didn't act quick, they would burn to death. But nevertheless, a certain feeling rose up in Natsuhiko's chest. That reminds me, something similar happened just the other day. What day was that? That's right, it was the morning after Yuuri had made the bizarre prediction. The moment that had crossed Natsuhiko's mind.
予言したのはそれだけじゃないはずだよ。
Yuuri whispered right beside him.
え？
The noise faded away into the distance so that all he could hear was Yuri's voice.
楽しいことも辛いことも勇気なくしては
I think this is a
乗り
different
越えられ
Yuuri.
ないことも。
I don't know if it's one from the past or not, but it's a different Yuuri.
だけどきっとそのどれもが避けちゃいけないことなんだよ。
ユーリ。
Why is she saying that sort of thing now? No, how can she even tell what I'm thinking? Those two questions came up into his head, but he formed neither of them into words. Yuuri alone continued to speak.
あれからいろんな問いをかけたよね。ヒコリンはその問いに答えられる。その答えに耐えられる。
Each word Yuuri spoke sent shudders into Natsuhiko's mind.
ううん。耐えられるはずなんだよ。だから思い出して。ヒコリンはその強さを手に入れたこと。どんな問いをかけられても、ヒコリンは正しい答えを出せるってこと。
And then, Yuuri fell silent. Silence filled the area. Not a sound could be heard. No, one sound could be heard. The ticking of a watch. Natsuhiko's eyes snapped to his watch. Before he had realized it, the watch that should have been broken had begun to mark the passage of time once again. Impossible. How? The date and time displayed. 9/11. 6:29. Early morning, 5 days ago. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and skip that because I think it's the intro song, and last time it got copyright matched or whatever, content ID matched. So it's gonna happen, but I have permission to play the actual game, so we're just gonna do that instead. I'm sure it's the same intro anyways. What are we doing?
Hi.
What?
Huh?
What? Hearing someone call out to him, Natsuhiko suddenly snapped out of his daze. Mashido was there before his eyes. Huh? I'm at home? He had the feeling he was somewhere completely different just a moment ago. But there's no way he could have gone out this early in the morning. It was probably his imagination. Am I still half asleep?
なんだっけ？
なんだっけって、手見せてみろって言ったの夏彦でしょ？
僕が？
Go ahead and build that back up.
そうだよ。開かない瓶を無理して開けようとしたら指怪我しちゃったんだ。
That's adorable.
ああ、悪い。そうだったな。
He took a closer look at Mashido's finger, and sure enough, there was a small wound on it.
痛そうだな。絆創膏を貼っておこ
う。Where's Yuuri? Natsuhiko took a bandage out of the medicine box and wrapped it around Mashido's finger.
そそっかしいな、真白は。
面目ない。
Natsuhiko finished wrapping the bandage.
はい、これで OK。
ありがとう。さーて、そんじゃパパッとご飯作っちゃうよ。ちょっと
She
待
must
って
still
て。
be sleeping. And with that, she went back to the kitchen. Now we're in chapter 2 for some reason. I don't know why, but we are. An everyday sight. A peaceful morning, just like last. Eventually, Yuuri came out of her room too.
ひこり、ましろ、おはよう。
ああ、おはよう、ユーリ。
ああ、ユーリおはよう。
After an exchange of salutations, Yuuri waited to eat breakfast with the other two. Natsuhiko enjoyed these leisurely mornings of his.
よし、ご飯できたよ。運ぶの手伝って。
That's super fast.
ああ、了解。
ご飯だ、ご飯だ。
Natsuhiko and Mashido laid out breakfast for 3 on the table.
それじゃ、いただきます。
And thus, another ordinary morning began. After breakfast was over, Natsuhiko sighed.
ごちそうさま。
私もごちそうさま。ましろ、今日も美味しかったよ。
じゃあ学校行こうか。ちょっとのんびりしすぎたよ。
Natsuhiko hustled to get himself ready for school. And then he and Mashido bade farewell to Yuuri.
それじゃあ行ってくるよ、ユーリ。
それじゃあね、ユーリ。また後で。
はーい。二人とも気をつけてね。
And with that, the voice at their backs, Natsuhiko turned on the lights and left. And once they reached the bus stop to wait for the bus, Mashido cheerfully mused.
ところで夏彦、今日はちょっと学校に行くのが楽しみじゃない？
どうしてだ？
だってほら、昨日ついにテレパシーが使えるようになったじゃん。先生に報告したら能力レベル1に認定してもらえると思うよ。
ああ、あれか。
True, yesterday Natsuhiko did use telepathy at the scene of the accident, albeit just once. However, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't do it a second time.
まあ、一応使えたのは事実だけどさ、あれを報告する気にはならないよ。先生に報告したら レベル認定試験を受けることになるだろう。
Oh god, that would suck. Obtaining ability level 1 certification made tuition slightly cheaper. However, you had to perform several tests of telepathy ability in front of your homeroom teacher to obtain it.
正直言って受かる自信がないよ。昨日のはまぐれなんだって。
そんな簡単に諦めちゃうの？
Yeah, probably. But I'll save just in case. Because we're getting kind of close to the end of this episode anyways.
わかった。エナ先生の前で恥かきたくないんだ。
まあそれもあるけど、能力レベルとかあまり興味ないってのがより大きいね。僕は能力レベル0のままでも全然構わないんだ。
そうなの？まあいいけどさ。
なんか言いたげだな。
いや別に。ただテレパシーも使えて損はないかもよ。もしも夏彦に超能力があったらみんなを笑顔にさせてあげられるかもしれないしさ。
なんだそれ。
昨日買ったボイスドラマ版ビヨンドビヨンド第1話のセリフ。
She's listening to it.
あ、そう。
Natsuhiko shrugged his shoulders. And right around then, the bus arrived. Natsuhiko and Mashido boarded the bus and headed to school. As soon as they arrived at school, they heard the usual clamor of telepathy. Okay, I'm actually going to leave this episode right here because we're about to start another day of school and I'm sure things are about to happen. I just saw the little notification of the name of the chapter called The Transfer Student, so I'm pretty sure we know who that is. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next MAMJ. Let's go.